Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions. Your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's comes at us from Lisa, Protomartyr, Processed by the Boys. I don't know much about this. I think we've had Protomartyr on the channel before. If not, I've at least heard the name. Maybe someone suggested it. But I have no idea what I'm in store for here, not even what genre. So let's just dive in, see what they're bringing to the table today.
Okay, we're rolling. And in 5, 4, 3, 2.
It's a very treble-heavy sound. Nice punch on the low end too, but kind of devoid of mids. It kind of sounds a little uncanny, but I'm sure I'll acclimate to it.
At us like a wild-eyed animal, a foreign disease washed upon the beach, a dagger plunge from out of the shadows.
A synth in the back?
Beyond all comprehension, all good laid low by outside evil, against belief.
Resting tension and then rising tension.
A giant beast.
Wait, is that a clarinet?
Black holes.
And just this heavy weight here. What is this music video?
No, none of that. Rolling in your heads. Reality has a far duller edge. Everybody's hunted with a smile. Processed by the boys.
That is a clarinet.
They got the job when they came back to town. Why not let them earn a living? Fill out the
Little
form,
clarinet ad-libs.
download the app, submit your face into the scanner. Everybody's hunted with a smile.
A lot of just like this feeling, this tension of it. Not a lot of resolution, not a lot of harmonic movement. Not even a lot of melodic movements either.
They look so nice. Tattoos of the children. So cool, so nice. This time,
Alright, here we go. We're building into something. Where are we going with this? Well, this is the second song, this week, but also both of them are today, that kind of left me speechless at the end of it. Okay, this one, though, I think is for another reason. It's the multimedia aspect of it. I don't know that I would be as, I'm not going to necessarily say flabbergasted, but where I thought my analysis was going to go, I kind of had things plotted out, especially as uniform as a lot of this song can be. It was sort of, it's flipped upside down by the end of the song, particularly because of the musical ending and the way that there is this massive schism between the music and the video. And that just kind of, it left me feeling a little confused and honestly kind of hollow. And I don't have enough time to process it. I've got to get into this analysis. So I'm hoping that as we talk about this, the conversation can flow into that somehow naturally, and I can develop some sort of thought process about that. But as of right now, I just want to talk about what the song's doing, and then maybe we'll bring in the music video when we approach the lyrics. Sound like a plan? You can't answer me. That's the plan. All right, kick it off. This song, like I said, it's kind of singular in vision. A lot of this track is about, this is the note. We're going to sit here over and over. Keep doing it. This is it. And usually this feeling of this sound, this note, this chord, it's typically kind of unsettling. There's elements of it that are a bit, I'm not going to say positive, but maybe neutral. But there's always some sort of tension. Sometimes it comes from the vocal delivery and the vocal pitch that is done alongside it, because I don't think the vocals are sung throughout most of this. It's spoken word. And so I don't think that the pitch of the vocals is necessarily a primary concern here. And so the wavelengths of the vocals can sometimes clash with what is going on in the harmonies of the band. But it's not always consistent. There's not really any pattern or rhyme or reason to it. It's just some are more consonant, some are less consonant, and that's just the way that it goes alongside the whims of the speaking. Because we don't really have too much chordal or melodic movement in the band. They just are. They don't change at all. It's the same thing over and always, always on the downbeat. Just bow, bow, bow. These big notes on the downbeat. Now they do change from time to time too. It's not totally static, but the change doesn't really alter the emotional element too much. When it comes to emotion in music, typically it's designed around the chord progression. Chords themselves can have emotional leanings to them, but if you want somebody to feel an atmosphere, it's going to be due to the progression of chords more so than just one chord in isolation. And the chords that are presented here don't really do too much to diversify the emotional field in any way, to create the complex elements in the progression that will make you feel a specific way. I would say that most of these chords all contain the exact same components to them. The differences between the notes in the chord. And just a little bit of Theory 101 here. Chords are created by and named by the intervals between the notes in there. So if you have, the first note of your key and then the third and the fifth and the octave, that is a specific chord right there. And it doesn't matter if you're in the key of C or D sharp or whatever, as long as these intervals are always going to be the same, the first, the third, the fifth, and the octave, that's always going to have a similar feeling, no matter what key you're in, no matter what those notes actually are, the intervals between them are what's creating the specific flavor of that chord. That's what's going on here. I think that the intervals are consistently the same. We don't actually get a true progression in here. We just get this same chord with different notes. And so it just always feels like the same. There is movement to it. The pitches will rise and fall, but the feeling doesn't change. And because there isn't any progression through the harmonies, we don't actually get a feeling of, I guess what we would call is like surface level emotions, right? Melancholy requires movement. It requires sadder chords and more neutral chords so that you can feel the progression, the contrast between them to elevate the more, sorrowful elements of those really heavier chords. This doesn't have anything to contrast. It's just the same all the time. But it's sort of, like I said, neutral to tense. It never really feels great, but it doesn't ever really feel bad either. It's just sort of is throughout a lot of it. And I think part of that too is that it starts off where I felt it was more tense, but over time I kind of lost that edge, just simply being a part of this sound for so long. And I mean, this is what I talk about with contrast. When I talk about, in extreme metals, that if you want your extremity to feel extreme, you need to show me the opposite of that. Otherwise, I'm going to acclimate to it and it's going to become the norm. That's what's happening here. Although probably for intent. I don't know. Well, hopefully this gets explained in the lyrical themes a little bit, but the song just doesn't change. It is the same thing all the time. And what starts out feeling a little uncomfortable just becomes the norm as the song goes on. And you may have noticed I was less receptive of the track at the beginning, but a couple minutes in, I'm starting to bob to it. I'm starting to get into the groove, and the harsher elements aren't really hitting me as hard just because I'm getting used to them. And so, yeah, I think that's what really makes the end of the track so jarring. With the police coming in, the music feels like it's ramping up towards something. There's always this tension that feels like it needs to be released, but it doesn't. It just continues on, and then the police raid this TV show. I don't really know what's going on in the music video. And the music doesn't gain any extra weight. It doesn't become terrifying or anything. It just doesn't match what's going on in the visuals. And that's the disconnect that kind of threw me off when I was listening to it. But that's all done on the harmonic side of things. The lack of change is a blessing and a curse. It's what makes it so similar throughout, but also what robs it of the harsh elements that it begins with. They're still there, you just acclimate to them over time. And if the song is supposed to feel harsh or endangering, it loses that. I don't know. I kind of feel like the song would have been better if they had stuck with that rising tension and leaned into it and went into more, harsh antagonistic sounds towards the end of the track. But they don't really go in that direction. So I don't know. As usual, benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume it's done for a purpose, but I can't see it right now. And it feels like it was kind of a missed opportunity there. The other thing I want to bring up is the production on this. I mentioned it at the beginning. It's a little unsettling. There's a nice punchiness to the low end, a lot of sound on the high end. In fact, I even turned my own volume down a little bit because I felt it was not necessarily painful with the high end tones, but it wasn't comfortable either. And kind of bringing the volume down helped bring the edge off a little bit on that. Again, though, as the song went on, I eventually put the volume back up a little bit, back to where it was, because I acclimated to it. But kind of having that middle end pulled out, it's an interesting combination of just lows and highs in, I don't know, I'm trying to read into it, what it might represent along with everything else, and maybe it's just their sounds, maybe there's nothing to read into it, but I immediately noticed it and it stood out to me. But there's also the production on the vocals, and this is a little bit of how they're singing or speaking, but also a little bit on the software side of things. It's just spoken word, right? There was maybe one part in here where he kind of went a little sing-songy, starting a sentence and then kind of ending it with a little vocal warble, almost like a very slow vibrato. But it's also a bit lower than I would expect for the sound. It's also lacking energy. It sort of just is. Just kind of like me, just kind of talking in a comfortable voice, comfortable range. You could put music to this, but would it fit? Maybe, maybe not. That's kind of what I feel about this. Sometimes the vocals feel like rhythmically and even pitch-wise, they connect with the music, but most of it just kind of feels like it's there. It fits within this 4-bar phrase idea, and so there is that connection, but harmonically, melodically, even rhythmically at times, it just sort of is its own thing. It doesn't really fit with everything else. And the production of it and its range and the way that it's EQ'd also feels a bit divorced from the band. So I found a lot of the production on this to be interesting. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but stuff that I eventually came around to, which I suppose just gives it a unique flavor that took me a moment to acclimate to. But, I mean, those two things immediately stood out to me, as well as the clarinet, which I mistook for a couple of instruments because it's so quiet in this song. I thought it was an organ and a synth, and I think it was the second verse. I finally got, like, between two beats where the instruments were, like, hitting their downbeat stuff, and the clarinet comes in between them in this little gap, and I'm like, dude, it's a clarinet! But it's so quiet. And it does a lot of honking, which is like the woodwind version of brass's blasting. It's when you put a lot of sound through it, and you get a very abrasive sound out of that. I'm not a big fan of it. It kind of hits in that same area with everything else, where if it was a little more, it would certainly be disruptive. I would prefer it to be a little less, but it sits in that middle area where it's noticeable at first, and then you forget about it as you continue on. You just get used to it. It's just some noise that's going on, and you just follow along with the melodic playing of it. I don't know. The clarinet frequently feels like it fits with everything, but it's so overshadowed by everything else. And its part doesn't always click with everything else. And much like the vocals, it just feels like this rogue entity that happens to be going on alongside the band. Especially since the band is so unified. The guitars, the bass, the drums, they're all in on this like downbeat attack thing. And the clarinet and the vocals are just dancing around that with their own EQ and their own sound and pitch placement and all that. It's kind of bizarre, but it ends up fitting together somehow, and I'm not entirely sure about that either. And so, these are most of the thoughts going on in my head. And we get to the end of the track, though, and I'm just like, what did I listen to? It's kind of punky, but it's certainly not punk music. Not in, what I think of, fast and aggressive and shouty and everything. It captures an aggressive sound. It captures a simplicity that punk music typically has in its composition, especially the unification where everyone's on the same idea. The vocals don't really care for pitch. That's kind of a punk thing too. I would describe this as punk music, but it's not what I think of. If I say punk to you, you're probably going to think of faster, upbeat stuff. Think of aggressive. post-punk is probably where this would be. It captures a lot of the energy of punk while doing something totally different sonically and compositionally. And what am I even listening to here? I don't know. It just does the same thing over and over for 5 minutes, and somehow it didn't bore me. Static songs like this typically, drain me a little bit, and this didn't. I was intrigued up until the end, but I'm very confused by the end of it. So there's still one piece of the puzzle left. The lyrics, maybe this is enough to give me a clear picture. If not, as usual, I will extend, an invitation for everyone to help me fill in some of the blanks that I have. But until then, let's read some lyrics, see what's going on there. A larger picture is beginning to be formed here. I'm not sure about everything, but well, let's get into it. Verses 1, 2, the bridge, and the first chorus all run into each other. They might as well be one combined thought. It's only really musically that there's a division between these. Verses 1 and 2 talk about some wild ways for the end times to be showcased. It says, will the ending come at us like a wild-eyed animal, maybe a foreign disease or a dagger plunged from out of the shadows, a cosmic grief beyond all comprehension, riots in the streets, or maybe a great beast turning mountains into black holes? No, we'll have none of that. That's just fiction that rolls around in your head. Reality is far duller. The chorus kicks in. Everybody's hunted with a smile being processed by the boys. An interesting song to pick for right now in history, especially American history. US history, I suppose, more specifically. America's pretty big. There's 2 whole American continents. Just one country then. The US. That the end times will not be fantastic. They will be dull. With people being hunted with a smile. Verse 3 talks about, not entirely sure. It says they got the job when they came back to town. Why not let them earn a living? Fill out the form, download the app, submit your face into the scanner. So we have surveillance state elements in here. This came out in 2020. So, well into the Freedom Act and PRISM and all of the surveillance stuff that's already been established over here on the federal level. But even the idea of submitting faces into scanners and downloading apps and having, phones constantly connected on your body. All of this documentation and surveillance of this person. But I don't know who this person is, what their intentions are, and maybe that doesn't matter. It says, why not let them earn a living? They just got back to town. Now I'm curious where they were. Obviously, where they were, they didn't have a job. Or if they did, they had to leave it when they left to come back here. Why not let them earn a living? I think if there's any bit of irony in this song, it would be an allusion to the fact that these people were recently in prison. But that would just be a guess. I don't think there's anything in there that supports it, and it's really just these 4 lines that talk about who the police are in this situation. The outro simply states, in their tattered Damalian uniforms, they look so nice. They have tattoos of their children. So cool. So nice. This time will be gentle enough. Next time will be different, but it'll be cool. So nice. They'll be gentle enough. this apologizing, of sweeping the issue under the rug, of collecting people. And the thing is too, I really like that chorus line. Everybody's hunted with a smile. Those who are collecting people off the streets, they're happy about it. They're joyous. They believe in what they're doing. That other half of the chorus is being processed by the boys, not by the police, by the boys. I think that's an interesting part too there. Not necessarily speaking to a governed group of people like city police would be, but the boys, a bunch of people just hanging out. You know, the guys. It's interesting how much of this lines up and is a sort of parallel to U.S. ICE right now. Just people coming back to town, regular old boys, throwing on a uniform and talking about, you know, they're good people, man. They got tattoos of their family on them. How bad could they be? They're being gentle enough anyways. And they got a smile. They love their job. So, tying this back to the music then. The music is supposed to feel unsettling and uncanny at the beginning, I'd wager. It's supposed to feel easier to listen to as it goes on, as it becomes the new norm. I think that's what they're aiming for on that. And so it makes it purposeful and probably more impactful that they don't have this big crescendo at the end, that this tension doesn't have a release. After all, they mentioned at the beginning that this is the end times, not fantastical, no world-eating monster coming out of the skies to devour us, but just human cruelty accepted by people. It just becoming the way things are. And that probably lines up with the music video too, sort of accepting this brutality on display as normal as the rest of the television actors. I still don't really know what the video is about, but they're just continuing to put on their show while this police are raiding the building. It's about keeping up appearances. Things feel off, but it's just below the surface. And eventually, if you just get used to it, it becomes normal. You ain't got to worry about it anymore. Oh, that's a depressing song. It was good art, though. Challenges, makes you feel, I'm not in a good mood right now, but that just means it was effective. These are my thoughts. Protomartyrs processed by the boys. What did you think of this? Anything that stood out to you? Anything that you'd like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Maybe you have your own interpretation of this. Maybe it relates to you in a different way that it relates to me. I'm sure that police states, and they're not... The U.S. doesn't have a whatever. Why can't I think of that word? They happen all over the world. That's what I'm saying. Maybe this also feels relevant to you right now. Whatever you want to add to the conversation, just go ahead and put it in the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, there's a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. All right, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.